Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Emi, and today I'm going to tell you about a support class that is somehow even more powerful than my beloved heal chrono. And of course, it's another mesmer variant on Troubadour. If you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I'm a big mesmer fan. I've made a previous video on how to play heal chrono, and I've been asked so many times to make a guide for heal Troubadour. I've honestly been lazy and procrastinated for months after finishing Infallible, but since the balance patch just dropped and there haven't been any nerfs to Troub, it is finally time to share the absolute insanity that is this build. We've got a lot to cover, so here's the table of contents. We'll start with a summary of the class and a general purpose build. Then I'll give a demonstration in the Golem room and walk you through a step-by-step example. After that, I'll go over 3 build variants. The 100% stability build and the CC build might feel familiar, but on top of that, I'll be going over a little known third build, the my Alacrity is terrible, so I'm taking matters into my own hands build. Let's start with the basics. What can Troubadour do and how is it different from Chrono? Heal Troubadour can provide permanent uptime on quickness along with all of the usual support boons, such as Might, Fury, Protection, and Regeneration. It has access to all of the infamous mesmer utilities, such as portals and mass invisibility, while also pumping out a crazy amount of Aegis and stability. It has extremely strong crowd control that can carry your team's CC needs, and it has a ridiculous amount of raw healing output. The primary difference between Troub and Chrono can be boiled down to 3 main things. Troub can only provide quickness, whereas Chrono can switch between either quickness or Alacrity. Troub's utility skills are instant 600 range shouts, whereas Chrono utility skills are delayed 3-second wells. Finally, and the most important thing, Troub has significantly less reliance on clones, thus they can give boons, healing, and utility without a target. Now let's get into the actual build and gameplay. For gear, you'll want to run a very standard healing setup. You should be looking for some mix of Harriers, Minstrels, or Givers. In general, the rule of thumb is full Harriers armor, weapons, and trinkets if you do not want to tank, full Givers if you want to tank with the highest amount of toughness possible, or full Minstrels if you want to tank and no one else in the squad has toughness. This allows you to bring more healing power and vitality. For runes, you'll be running Rune of the Monk for lots of healing. Alternatively, if you're struggling to keep up boons, you can run the Rune of Water for extra boon duration. For sigils, on both weapon sets, you'll want to run Water and Transference to maximize your healing output. Finally, for the Relic, I recommend Relic Efebe, which provides a permanent swiftness uptime and is the only source of swiftness in this build. For traits, you'll want to run this setup. I won't go over all of the traits in this video, but I wanted to highlight a few key ones. First, restorative mantras versus medic's feedback. Unlike heal chrono, where the ideal heal skill is to run heal mantra, Troub has a very powerful heal tail that many choose to run instead. This means that you get, comparatively, less value out of restorative mantras. If you're running with an inexperienced group that needs a lot of downstate reviving, medic's feedback can be an option to take. Next, let's talk about chaotic persistence. This is a minor trait, so you'll always have it, but I get a lot of questions about why we don't have 100% boon duration from your gear. This trait gives you a whopping 250 concentration while under the effect of regen, which maths out to be just under 20% boon duration. Life of the party is your source of quickness. It allows your F1 and F5 to provide quickness up to 5 people, and additionally helps maintain permanent might and fury. Finally, I wanted to mention altered chord versus call and response. I've seen plenty of hardcore folks prefer one or the other, and they're both fine to take. However, the playstyle between them is very different. To summarize, call and response can be used to double the effect of your F1 through 4 shatters themselves. For example, you can take massive advantage of this trait by double dipping the CC on both F2 and F3. However, this takes clever timing and proper clone management since the instrument will only resummon after a delay if you've shattered with 3 clones. On the other hand, altered chord is generally easier and more forgiving for new players since it doesn't require as strict clone management. Additionally, it makes your F5 available more often since you can lower the cooldown by shattering F1 through 4 with at least 1 clone. Not only is this better quickness uptime, but you benefit from the increased stability and barrier as well. Now let's talk about the weapons. The main ones you'll want are Rifle and Scepter Shield. Rifle is an insanely strong weapon for healing, boons, and crowd control. Rifle 2 has a low cooldown and can be used off cooldown for clone generation and healing. Rifle 3 is a dual-faceted skill. Let it time out for Might and Fury, or cast it a second time for a burst of healing. Keep in mind, if you detonate it early, it will not provide any boons. Rifle 4 is primarily used for CC, and finally Rifle 5 gives a lot of barrier on initial cast. I would not recommend using the second cast of this skill unless you're using it for organized movement. For your offhand, Scepter will provide a clone for each auto attack chain that you complete, and the second skill is a channeled block. This works really well alongside Shield and is a great set for learning how to tank. Alternatively, if you need ad control, I highly recommend swapping to a Focus offhand. The second cast of Temporal Curtain will pull everything in a 600 radius, which is amazing for fights with a lot of ads. Finally, if you need mobility or CC, Spear is also a great weapon to have. The combo of Spear 2 into Spear 5 does a ton of CC, and both Spear 4 and 5 can be used for movement. For utility skills, I would recommend these as you're learning the class. I wanted to give a quick note about Tail of the Soulkeeper, which generates quickness, might, and fury in a large radius. You can actually keep up 100% quickness uptime with just F1 and F5. However, if your teammates are inexperienced and aren't stacking, or in fights where there's boon corruption from bosses, having an extra quickness generation source can be very helpful. Additionally, I wanted to emphasize that I think that the tails are what makes Troubadour such a powerful healer, even compared to Chrono. Firstly, the fact that they are instant cast and 600 range has several advantages. Instant cast means that you can react quickly and instantly protect your teammates without waiting for a cast time, and the large range means that your teammates' positioning can be very forgiving. Secondly, the Aegis and Stability tails in particular are incredible for negating specific raid mechanics. Having access to multiple charges of 600 range Aegis makes encounters such as Kadim challenge mode and Damon's challenge mode much easier, and the massive amount of group stability and stun break is great for high knockback fights like many of the Fractal challenge modes. On top of that, tails as a whole provide a lot of healing on use and are on a relatively short cooldown. These are some of the common skills that you can switch out. I won't go over each one individually, but I'll show them on the screen with a note on its situational use. There are actually quite a few other options you can also take, but I'll talk about those builds in particular once we're done talking about the general builds. Now let's talk about the rotation, and seriously, it's super easy. As I mentioned earlier, you can honestly just spam your skills off cooldown and you'll get pretty far. But there is a gentle priority of skill usage that I would recommend. The general idea is, use F1 and F5 to provide quickness for your teammates, use Rifle 2 and Heal Tail for clones and healing, use Mantra of Concentration before any knockbacks, and use Aegis Tail before any blockable attacks. If you're running Altered Chord, shatter F2, F3, and F4 with at least one clone to recharge your F5 faster. Alternatively, save your F3 for CC or F4 for healing or invulnerability. I usually stay in Rifle the whole time since the skills are so insanely powerful, and I only swap to the offhand set for specific reasons, such as Shield for blocking, Focus for ad control, and Spear for CC. Now I'll do a demonstration on the Golem. If you ever want to practice your healing, this is a great way to do it. I like to turn on the arena damage at the extremely threatening level, and I would also add Alacrity to your character since you can assume a proper squad composition will have an Alacrity source. Finally, it doesn't matter what the Golem is, so feel free to just use any of the options for the target. Before starting the fight, make sure to charge up all of your mantras. Start with F1 and F5 to instantly provide a lot of quickness, and I also like to place Rifle 3 down and let it expire to quickly ramp up Might and Fury. Next, I'd use Rifle 2 to generate a clone, followed by an F2 shatter. This will reduce our F5 cooldown by 2 seconds. Now, we'll weave in a Heal Tail to give our party swiftness as well as generate a clone, and then go ahead and use F3 as well if we don't think we need the CC soon. This will, once again, reduce our F5's cooldown by 2 seconds. From this point onwards, just keep prioritizing your F1 and F5 for quickness, F2 through 4 for cooldown recharging, and strategically time your CC, Aegis, and stability according to the boss's mechanics. Not too bad. Now that we've talked about the general purpose build, I'm going to talk about 3 variants that I often swap between. If you've seen my Heal Chrono video, the first 2 builds are going to sound very familiar, but we'll refresh your memory as well as go over some of the minor differences between the class. First up, the permanent stability build. And to be honest, I've basically already given you the build as a standard issue troop build, but I'll take this time to really elaborate on all of the sources of stability. Going in order, Mantra of Concentration will provide stability on both the 3-second charge animation as well as every cast afterwards. The stability tail gives Stabin a huge radius and can be used for stun breaks, and in the Chaos trait line, the final column has a trait called Bountiful Disillusionment, which provides stability to allies when using your F5 skill. These three things alone will provide 100% stability uptime if you space them out, but if you really want more stability, you can take Mimic to refresh your stability tail, or Signet of Illusions to refresh your shatter skills. The rotation can be thought of as a few general concepts. Charge and use your Mantra of Concentration off cooldown, and during this 15 seconds when it's not available, cast F5 into a Signet refresh, or Mimic into stability tail. Repeat. Next, let's talk about the ultimate CC build. Alright team, I must confess, I personally think that Chrono is better at CC than Troub is. The reason is twofold. First, Chrono has access to Continuum Split, which is effectively a ×2 multiplier on your CC, since you can reset the cooldown of all skills used in the CS window. Troub has a lot of additional CC via their special F2 and traits like Call and Response, but an additional downside is that the CC in Troub is quite delayed with a lot of casting. So perhaps it would be more accurate to say that this is the slightly less ultimate CC build. Similar to Chrono, this build is quite different from the general purpose build, so I recommend either having a completely different build template or even a different character. Also, between the last video and this video, Technobabble got nerfed and people keep coming into my stream to tell me that it's my fault because I keep talking about it. I don't know if that's true, but sorry anyways. Also keep in mind that we are switching off a lot of healing power in favor of CC duration. That means that your overall healing output is going to be lower. I only ever play this build if I'm in a squad running a double healer, or if I know from experience that a boss's healing pressure is on the low side. We'll be changing up the runes, sigils, relic, and utility skills. Mesmer runes will increase the duration of dazes by 33%. For Defiant foes, you can treat this as a 33% increase in the Defiance break value. Sigil Paralyzation will increase the duration of stuns by 30%. It's worth noting that stuns and dazes are two different types of crowd control. Dazes will benefit from stun duration, but not the other way around. This means any skill that dazes will actually double dip the CC duration. For the Relic, we'll be taking Relic of the Citadel, which will blast your target with a stun whenever you use your elite skill. For the utility skills, Mantra of Distraction will daze on every cast, and fully charging it will refresh the cooldown of your F3. Tail of the Mastermind, aka CC Tail, will daze your target, but only on the fourth and final pulse of the animation. Lastly, we've got Signet of Domination and Signet of Humility, both of which are excellent range CC options. For the Troub-specific mechanics, F2 has an animation in the shape of a cone. Enemies standing in the middle of the cone will be dazed. F3 will do varying amounts of CC depending on your distance from the enemy, and if you're using Altered Chord, you want to chain your F3 into F5 so your F5 does CC as well. Again, the rotation can be thought of as a few general concepts. The boss gets a Defiance bar, press all your CC skills. Honestly, the bar will probably break before you're done pressing them because Troub has so many cast times and delayed CC. Finally, let's talk about a gem that I didn't mention in my Heal Chrono video. Honestly, because I totally thought it would get nerfed. It didn't get nerfed, so here I am. This is the "my Alacrity is terrible, so I'm taking matters into my own hands" build. Instead of giving you a specific build, let's just talk about the theory behind it. It boils down to a combination between a trait and a utility skill. Specifically, Signet of Inspiration, or SOI, is a core Mesmer utility skill that extends the duration of boons on yourself only. So if you have Alacrity and use this skill, it will increase the duration of your existing Alacrity by 3 seconds. Blurred Inscriptions is the last trait in the last column of Inspiration. This will improve the effect of Signets, and for SOI, it will increase the target limit to 5. Can you see where I'm going with this? If you take both of these in combination, you can help extend the duration of boons that are already existing on your allies. So if you have someone that's giving that initial hit of Alacrity, you can take Mimic and SOI to extend that by 6 seconds every 20-ish seconds. This is definitely a bit of a crutch that I use when I'm playing with less experienced folks, and keep in mind that Troub cannot directly provide Alacrity, so this can only be used in combination with an existing source on your squad. Similar to the other variants of this build, remember that changing these traits and foregoing 2 utility slots can be quite the trade-off, but it can be worth it if you want to quietly help out your DPS that are racing for their top spot. So ta-da, that's how you play Heel Troop, and I'm glad to finally have this out after hemming and hawing after so many months of procrastination. If you would like to support the channel, please consider liking, subscribing, or commenting to tell me what you think. I'm also an ArenaNet partner, and I stream quite regularly on Twitch, so if you have any questions that you'd like answered, feel free to swing by and say hi. Thank you very much for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next video.